My last video got me thinking. I've actually gotten a lot of emails, especially around this time, asking me if I would do some kind of holiday gift buying guide or suggestions for the holidays or my favorite videos of the year. I'll probably do some kind of countdown later on about my favorite things of this year, but I tend not to like to do gift idea videos because I'm not sure if I have the best viewpoint on this type of thing. And there's a few reasons that I don't think. I kind of had in my mind the traditional gift buying guide. I remember watching X Play a while back, and they kind of have these series where they name the best 360, best PC, best, all the other consoles and things like that. And they name the best games of those consoles. I could do that. But at the same time, I don't think I need to. You guys are very discerning viewers because you're here, you're watching me, so I know you've got good taste, and so I know you guys are pretty smart. And if you own a console, I don't think it's unfair to assume that you guys are pretty well informed about what the good games are in the console. I don't think you're stupid. If you bought the 360, you bought good games for it. I mean, you're interested to know if I thought the really popular games are any good, and that's fair enough. But, I mean, what am I going to tell you? What should you buy for the 360? Borderlands. Borderlands is really good. It's best if you have friends, if you have friends online. The single-player experience is somewhat underwhelming, especially when you could be getting much better loot. I think it's a really party game experience where you kind of waste time with three friends and blow shit up. There's nothing wrong with that. Other games I really liked on the consoles. I liked the Beatles Rock Band. I liked Modern Warfare 2, although I'm not a big online multiplayer guy. I know I just said Borderlands, but I'm not a big deathmatchy type player, and so Modern Warfare 2 doesn't really sing to me in terms of multiplayer. And I know a lot of people were pissed off about the dedicated server thing, but I basically rented Modern Warfare 2, played it for 6 hours, probably near 10 hours, beat the single-player campaign, and returned it. And, it was fine. It was like basically a Michael Bay take on Red Dawn. Nothing wrong with that either. It was fun. I played it on a difficulty that was much harder than I probably should have. I should have probably just played on the normal difficulty, so I could have played through it and felt like a real badass instead of feeling like I sucked on the veteran mode over and over and over. Pardon me. Sorry. I'm drinking my root beer. What other games? Dragon Age. I really like Dragon Age. That's a multi-platform game. In fact, most of these games I'm talking about are multi-platform in some variety. I think the only one I really liked that wasn't multi-platform was Uncharted 2. Really liked that one. Actually, the multiplayer in that one, really good. I played that for a long time. In fact, I'd probably still like to go back and play it. I just got a Bluetooth headset that I could use on playing that one, so cool times. But, again, you guys know what the new games are. You know what the good games are. And so I don't think there's much point in me telling you. And when it comes to my other gift ideas, and this is not something you already don't know, I think it's just best to keep in mind who you're buying for. And you can't go wrong with that. And besides that, my gifts tend to be kind of nostalgic and older type stuff, because I'm a big fan of the older type stuff. The stuff I grew up with. The whippersnappers don't know what good games are today. And so when I go gift buying, I tend to go to a used bookstore like Bookman's. I don't know if you have Bookman's where you live, but most of you have used bookstores. And again, I actually don't know if it's much of a faux pas to buy somebody something used for Christmas or a birthday, but I guess I do. Sometime. It depends. But when it comes to buying stuff, most of my friends tend to be gamers. Siblings and parents are a little harder to shop for. And I'll get to that in a minute, but I can tend to find something that kind of piques their interest. So for gamers, like I said, new games, I don't think it's much point because most gamers tend to buy those things themselves. But, actually this might help. I have a stack of stuff near my TV because I'm kind of bad about putting away my movies, but this actually might be a good stack to use as a reference here. Gamers, especially younger gamers, probably missed out on a lot of the games that I grew up with, especially like older Nintendo games, SNES, and especially PC. Other things I might suggest would be like Atari consoles, 7200, 2600. You can find all that sort of stuff at a used bookstore. But PC games, I never go wrong with PC games, especially the really good classics like XCOM, the Wing Commander series, the Ultima series, Ultima Underworld, all those games, Syndicate, even games like SWAT 4, Ripper, that type of thing. You know, that especially if you're familiar with this site, you can get a pretty good laugh on that. And especially with the really high quality of DOSBox lately, DOSBox is even much better than it used to be back in the day. And I can run virtually anything I want on DOSBox now. It's really cool. And it's a good way, especially if these games are a little bit before a gamer's time. Like if they were born in the 90s or something like that, I mean, these games are still awesome. And you know, I probably can't speak. They might still find the graphics really dated. I don't know. But that's what I tend to do. I also tend to really favor books, movies, and board games, mainly because those are three things I know really well. So I kind of stick to my strengths. And besides, books tend to imply that you gave the gift a lot of thought. So it's like, oh, a book you thought about. So I don't know. I get very good reactions when I do books. So what books? I will not suggest any books because, really, like I said, you got to tailor it to their choice. You got to pick a book you think they'll like. I mean, you could give them a book that has some significance to you, like your favorite book, maybe. But that's always a good thing to do. By the same token, I always like audiobooks. I don't listen to them as much as I do now, but when I was still going to college or going to work, I had a really long commute, and audiobooks are great for commutes. And one site in particular that I can think of is audible.com, which offers a subscription fee. And every month you can get 1 or 2 books, and any books you want. There are some holes in the library, but if it's mainstream, typically it'll be there. And these books will be nonfiction, fiction, whatever. Sometimes radio shows, sometimes old, sometimes new. It's worth a look if you're curious at all. But what's really cool about this is, with the subscription fee, like I said, any 2 books you want, and these books will vary wildly in price. So sometimes you'll see a book for $9.95, which is not that great a deal, and sometimes you'll see some books that are $65.99, you know. And especially like the Game of Thrones series, the type of books I like are always really, really expensive. Like Game of Thrones, Dresden Files, what else? Terry Pratchett novels. Those books are savagely overpriced. But when you have the Audible.com subscription, you just get any 2 books you want. So there you have it. I really like it. Especially if like an iPod or an iPhone, it works really well for that. The downside to Audible is that they tend to download their files in kind of a proprietary DRM format. And they're not MP3s. They're the proprietary format. And so you kind of have to install their software and download that. And so if you ever... I only ran into this problem because I had to upgrade my computer, and I moved, and I upgraded my computer again. And so when you change your computer, it tends to recognize it as a different computer, and so you can only register your books like 3 times. So when you've passed your 3-point mark, you have to email their technical support and have it reset. But you don't get to keep, like, basically what happens is you can't access your files if all of a sudden your computer's not authorized. And so the DRM is not really that bad as long as you have that software on your computer, but it's still kind of annoying. So, but I still think it's really a good deal. And who knows? Maybe there's some way to strip it off. But I was also thinking of some other gifts that I tend to favor, and it's actually kind of funny that I have this stack of movies here, which actually don't represent a bad cross section of some of the things I might get a friend of mine for the holidays. The first thing, somebody actually gave me this on the wish list that I had up, which I was kind of surprised at. I put the Guild Seasons 1 and 2 on my wish list. This, if your friend's a gamer, may not have seen this, and this is a really, really funny... It's a fun series. I like it a lot. If you have a friend who's a fan of Monty Python but doesn't really know much else about British comedy or has never seen this before, Blackadder Remastered, the complete series, a little more expensive, but this is one of the all-time classics, and if they've never been exposed to... Blackadder may be a little obscure outside of Great Britain, but it really is one of the all-time classics, and it's, Rowan Atkinson, the same guy did Mr. Bean, only he talks. Red Dwarf, Back to Earth. I know some Red Dwarf fans probably were not even aware this existed, but this is kind of the probably the 10-year reunion of the series. Yeah. This one is actually, as a big Blade Runner fan, this one I was disappointed by this one, but that was just because probably the series wasn't coming back. This is just kind of a reunion show. But this is very Blade Runner-ish. I liked it a lot. Oh, I remember this one. I tend to like to give kind of nostalgic movies and books from my childhood, from probably the mid to late 80s to early 90s, and so The Last Starfighter. I would believe it. I've actually probably given this gift to a friend of mine already, just because I was a huge fan of this movie as a kid. This is kind of like every kid's fantasy, where a kid who is really good at video games gets chosen by an alien race because he's so good at video games to fly starfighters against the Codan Armada, and so he saves the galaxy because he's awesome at video games. And so you can imagine how much that appeals to a kid, you know. Love that stuff. Also, other movies I tend to give as gifts are my favorite films, like Big Trouble in Little China, basically any John Carpenter film, anything like that. This one is kind of, this is where I really brand myself as an uber nerd. But if you have like parents or relatives who are kind of into documentary series, I know my dad is, and I didn't get my dad this, but I might, is Cosmos by Carl Sagan. If you don't know what that is, it's you probably saw that song from Carl Sagan, or at least the Carl Sagan remix that I posted on my front page, where Carl's kind of singing this song. And this guy did, I think, a 13 episode series of a documentary where it's for PBS, I think, where it's actually kind of bizarre, where he just kind of bops around the galaxy talking about stuff, where he's just like, now we're going to take my spaceship around the Milky Way, and oh look, there's Jupiter. Did you know that Jupiter's rings are made of billions and billions of ice particles? And you're like, really? He's like, yeah. And did you know that the first person to hypothesize that the Earth was round was this guy in ancient Mesopotamia in 900 years BC? And you're like, really? And he's like, yep, and here's how. And it is really one of the best made documentaries, or what do you call it, a series, ever made. And if you're at all interested in science, and who shouldn't be interested in science, this is really, I mean, it's a little dated in some ways, but it's still, like, it's amazing actually how well some of this stuff has stayed current. And in fact, this series actually does go back and addresses some of the more dated issues. And it's really just certain things like certain scientific theories that may have been proven or disproven or expanded upon. Like, I think there's one point where Carl kind of hypothesizes on why the dinosaurs would extinct, and you know, whether it was meteor impacts or global warming. I don't know, but this is really a really informative and really atmospheric. It's almost like a music video with science, you know, where it's got its own orchestral score. It's got very trippy imagery. This would be a great video to watch stoned, because I'm not kidding. Carl Sagan has this spaceship, and he flies around the Milky Way, and for like long stretches of time, it's just Carl like bopping around, going like, "Now we're going to the Betelgeuse system," and he flies to the Betelgeuse system, and you're like, really, really fun stuff. But maybe kind of a disappointing holiday guide. I'm sorry if it is, but really, that's my best advice: is, you know, keep your audience in mind. If you don't know what they like, give them something that has some significance to your life, like a favorite movie or a favorite book. Used bookstore, hard to go wrong with that, in my opinion. I would suggest going to certain like online stores that you might not visit that much. Actually, I think the only place you can get Cosmos anymore is like the Discovery.com online store, where you can get another good gift is the Mythbusters. I love Mythbusters as a series, and that's actually one of the more accessible science-y shows you can find. I really like having Mythbusters on as background noise. I don't know why, but it helps me think. Go figure. I used to tune in every week. In fact, Mythbusters kind of got not so good about a year or 2 years ago, but it's getting better. I find there. I don't know why. I don't know. Trying to think. Yeah, I tend to do books a lot. Anyway, I hope that helped. Maybe not. I know you guys are kind of reacting, but I was really trying to think of cheaper gifts to get people, because a lot of times you don't want to spend, you know, like $50, $60 on You want to get something that has significance and yet doesn't break you at the same time. And so that's why I suggested movies, because movies tend not to be over $20, or a book. A book doesn't tend to be over 12. The audiobook thing tends to be about $20 a month, so I don't know. Something else, board games tend not to be over 40. I could suggest some board games. I got some board games behind the camera, actually. I'm trying to see what I would suggest. It really depends on the number of players you think you can get, or you think that person will be able to get. Two-player games are actually kind of uncommon for board games. There's a few, like Lost Cities is always a good pick-up-and-play two-player game. A much heavier game that I like is Twilight Struggle, which is a game about the Cold War. One of the heavier games that I like is War of the Ring, which is a Lord of the Rings two-player war game. It goes to 4, but it's really meant to be 2. There's a few other two-player games, but really some of the classics: Princes of Florence, Puerto Rico, Carcassonne. There's a bunch of Carcassonne expansions. Small World. Small World is a remake of a game called Vinci. It has nothing to do with the It's a Small World ride. It's kind of a empire building game. Very, very, very strange, but also very fun. Let me see. Oh, something for if you have a gamer in the family who has kind of eclectic taste. Somebody actually donated also StarCraft the board game, which I just opened that up, and I'm actually StarCraft the board game is one of those board games that has a lot of tons and tons of little plastic bits that you have to very carefully organize, or you will never ever play it, because you'll open the box and see like this mass of pieces and you're like, oh shit. It is a good game. I've actually played it one time, and it was another friend's copy, but very good. I'm trying to think. You might actually track down some old copies of games that I reviewed. Believe it or not, Nightmare is really good at one time for a party. You play it one time, whatever. Let's see what else. I think TV shows on DVD are actually a really good series. Netflix subscriptions, also a really good gift idea. I tend to favor that a lot. Anything to avoid gift cards and cash, you know? Actually, gift cards are a step up, but I tend to, yeah. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. That was what was nagging at me, was if you have a friend who was a big fan of Mystery Science Theater, or if they're not familiar with Mystery Science Theater, that's always a good start. You can pick up single videos of that, or at least expose them to that. That's a Christmas gift in its own, is exposing them at least to Mystery Science Theater. But if even fans of that may not be aware of Riff Tracks or Cinematic Titanic, if you haven't checked those out, they're definitely worth a look. And Riff Tracks especially it started out awesome, and it has only gotten better. And that's hard to believe, but it really has. And that's not even, they do two things. They do kind of a video on demand service where they have their commentaries attached to public domain type movies. And those movies are like Planet of Dinosaurs, Reefer Madness, Maniac, that type of thing. But they also do commentaries on modern movies, and those are so spectacularly awesome that it's really hard to even convey until you've heard it yourself. I'm thinking about movies like Transformers 1 and 2, Twilight, which are like the only reasons to ever own those DVDs. So that actually might be a really good gag gift, is to give your guy friend a copy of Twilight, and he's like, "What the fuck is this?" And you're like, "But don't relax, I got you the riff tracks of that as well." And so that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea. Some of the videos I remember watching really lately are really, really good. And this is actually kind of an obscure gift that I can almost guarantee you that this person doesn't have. I'm trying to think. What was it? Oh, that was it. The Room. Tommy Wiseau's movie The Room, which has its own commentary. One of the best things they've ever done is that movie. It's, oh, hi everybody, you know. Transformers 2, that really good riff tracks. Twilight, awesome. Really brutal riff tracks. Dragon War, I found, had a really good one. If only to see Robert Forster floating. He plays a kung fu master, Robert Forster does. Anyway, that's definitely worth checking out. That you may not have thought of that one. That's it. I'm trying to think of movies that might stuff that might appeal to the non-nerd set, because again, nerds are kind of easy because we're into movies, games, and science, and I guess I'm not very good at shopping for my elders. I don't know. Anyway, I hope that helps. See you guys on the other side of the holidays. Bye.